All right. Joe LaChapelle,
Yes, sir.
the Ice Viking Dad. I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and talk to me. I think once anybody looks at any one of your profiles, any one of your pages, I think they get a pretty clear picture of what you're all about. As a fellow ice bather, as a fellow cold exposure enthusiast, I guess what I would want to know, ice bather to ice bather, is where do you go when you go into the water?
You mean my location or
No, like your headspace. Where do you go? Because I go certain places, or I try to go certain places, and I feel like I go a little bit farther into the cave every time I go in. And so far, this has been an endless cave for me. Where do you go when you go into the ice water?
because the reason I do it is for my mental health. So every time I go, I'm just telling myself it's my healing process. So I just have to go.
When you say healing process, because what I've boiled it down to for me is almost a form of self-mutilation in a way where it's controlled. It's not fire, right? So it's not destructive, but it hurts just enough to like tell me that I'm there, right? And that's kind of what I try to ignore when I go in is that sensation. The contraction, like when you get into that first cold one and you feel your whole body just tense up, and then the head game is to just let it all go, right? So do you feel like it's also a self-mutilation in a way, like a non-destructive self-mutilation?
uh, that's a fucking good question. Uh, kind of, but it's for a good reason.
Right. So what does it bring you closer to, or rather, what does it bring you farther away from?
It brings all the negative shit in my head far away,
Hmm.
but it brings me closer to my meditation state that I can't get anywhere else.
Describe, I want you to describe for me though your meditation state. Like, is it that you try to just make everything disappear, or is it that you focus on a particular thing? Like, what's your headspace as you're getting into that water? You feel that cold line kind of burn its way up your calf, up your thigh, hit your torso. Like, what are you thinking as you go in that water?
It's just I gotta do it. I have to do it. Even if the pain comes, I know my hands and feet are gonna freeze first, but for the rest of the body, it's a good feeling. Like I like the little pinch and the little burn on my chest and my back, but for for the mental state, I just once I'm in, I don't think about anything else but my breathing.
What does it heal for you though, right? Because you've got a history of addiction, and I think everybody's been touched by addiction in one way or another. What, I mean, do you mind telling me about your addiction, like getting into it, getting out of it, and how the cold water has really helped you distance yourself from it?
Oh yeah, especially now that I've been doing it like daily. Now it's like another level. I don't even want to drink anymore. I don't. It's like everything's gone. But my addiction problem, I had like pretty much got it under control when my wife got pregnant of my daughter Charlie, and the only thing that was left was alcohol. I was struggling with, especially in the summer when I start working. It's like I drink a lot after work to calm myself down. But now with the daily dips, it's just next level. It's I don't even want to drink anymore.
What were you, was it just alcohol for you always, or was it other stuff?
Pretty much like cocaine and opiates and alcohol.
How has the cold water helped you with that? How is the cold water, like, explain that to me. Explain how the one thing, they say that in order to drive out a nail, you have to use another nail, and they say that often when it comes to habits. Um, how has this nail helped to drive out that addiction nail?
I don't know if it's the dopamine that the cold water gives you, or just my mental state has changed since I've been doing this. I want to get more healthy. Like now my drug is to be healthy and fit. Like I changed my habits for a better habit.
How long you're on a streak now, like a couple of 100 days, right? Ice bathing.
401.
401. How long are you gonna do it for?
I stopped the streak yesterday. Not yesterday, the day before. I missed one day, so my 401. But I did it yesterday and today. So
Now you're hardcore. You chop holes in lakes. I've seen you do it. Um, I haven't gotten that far yet. We have an irrigation pond for a farm right in our backyard, and I'm waiting for it to fully ice over before I kind of before I do that, chop a hole in the ice. Now you're up in Quebec. Is where I don't know what made you take the leap from doing it in a freezer, right? You got a freezer that you go into versus doing it in the lake.
freezer was I got it this for the summer.
Hmm.
I used to do it in a bath, like you used to do it, and it was too much stuff to get ready, especially when I finished work. I didn't have time to fill up the bath, put ice. So I got a chest freezer. That's the best thing for the summer. You
Hmm.
just plug it in, unplug it when it's ice, and but yeah, open water like in the wild. That's next level. You connect with nature. It's crazy.
Now you don't do this alone though. Like, have you gotten people around you to start doing this? Because when I started ice bathing, I was the only one that I knew that did it. My wife had got into her first ice bath this summer, which was a surprise to me. She woke me up one day at 5 in the morning and she's like, can you help me get in the ice bath? And I'm like, dude, I don't wake up until like, not until a little while after that. I'm like, you're getting in the ice bath? After years of trying to talk her into it, on her own volition, she decided to go in. And as much as she hates it for the obvious reasons, she loved it for, I guess, the reasons that you and I both love it. You have a daughter. How old is your little girl?
Charlie, the oldest, she's 5, and I got the youngest. She's 2, but the youngest didn't. She hasn't done it yet.
Okay, so I have a daughter who's also almost 5, and she's my third, but she gets right in. She actually doesn't stress the ice at all. And I've seen your daughter get in the ice bath too, right?
Your youngest does it?
My youngest does it.
Oh yeah, I thought. Oh yeah.
No, that was my oldest won't touch it as of yet. My son, he has and he does. He's starting to buy into it because he's a pretty intense soccer player. And for recovery and for training purposes, he likes to incorporate it into his program, which I think is really cool because he's only 9. But my youngest, we've for years now, we've been filling up the bathtub with just water. She doesn't care if it's hot or not. She bathes in it, she plays in it, she absolutely enjoys it. Talk to me about your daughter doing the ice bathing though. Like, tell me about that. How did she get into it?
I think she loved cold water since she was a baby. Because before I was in all this, before I got my depression and I found Wim Hof and everything, she was taking the hose straight out, and she was crawling and she was putting it on herself. And then I got into the Wim Hof, and then I saw her like going into the snow barefoot and everything before I was even doing it. So when I started doing the ice bath, she got more curious and she started climbing in the bath with me and walking like she was only 3. And then the year after, she was going inside with us and sitting and breathing. And last winter, she did her first one during the winter, and she stayed like 15 or 20 seconds. Like it was the longest she ever done, right in the middle of the winter. Because usually we do it in the summer with her,
Hmm.
but now she nails it. It's in her DNA, I think.
She went, well, I mean, you're Viking, dude, you're Viking. Did she go in the lake? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, she comes in the lake and everything now.
Dude, that's so crazy. So the people that I've seen you go in the lake with, those are people from your community, or those just ice bathers that congregate there? Did you get them into it?
Yeah, when I started, I was doing it like with one or two of my friends who were curious, and then I was posting videos, and people were coming up and asking me if they come and join, and then slowly build up a big community now. And I got and I don't know if you saw my latest videos. It's like live without fear. Like uh, I started this with a couple of bathers that I found and are friends with from last winter, and so we decided to build this brand so we could help other people and deal with all kind of mental issues.
So what do you mean? Is it a support group? Do you guys have therapists? Are you basically pillars for other people in your community? What is this that you do?
Yeah, slowly we're just trying to build a name, but slowly we would like to not to make it a franchise, but to make it like a studio where people could come and like have help they need.
Now, why? Why is that important? Why is that important to you?
For me, because the cold got me out of a dark place. Um I put a sheet down so I remember everything I want to say.
Do it.
In 2019, I uh, I had a post traumatic syndrome. Like I I found a friend of mine dead in the snow, and I think I always been dealing with depression my whole life, but that like triggered something, and I lost it for like 3 months. I wasn't able to function and not do anything, and that's what happened. I found like I was looking on the internet to try to find a way to cure my depression because I didn't want to go back to medication because I knew if I fall back in that place, I would keep using that for a long time. So I found the Wim Hof on the Joe Rogan podcast saying that he could cure anxiety, depression, and everything. At first, I thought it was stupid. I thought, yeah, right, I'm gonna breathe and go in cold water and cure everything. It's fucking dumb. So I tried the breathing, and right away I found like a relief. And I was doing like breathing like 2 3 times a day because I was finding a way to get better because I couldn't function without a headset on my head, and it was all like those speeches like to motivate you. Like I had this 24 hours a day on my head. The only time I could take it off was when I was driving my girl to daycare and then coming back home and going back in my head, putting back the earphones. For 3 months, I was like that. I couldn't function at all.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
So it's funny that you say that. Um, I think I was in a similar place for a different reason. I think perhaps I might still be, right? Um, but it's funny because if I were to tally up the amount of hours that I've spent listening to probably the same shit that you listen to, the motivational stuff, right? I probably am in the hundreds, if not thousands of hours of listening to it. It would become just background noise for me. And, when I would tune in, I'd hear like a catchy something that would make me feel great. And then nothing changed, right? Nothing ever changed. It's just really cool one-liners and shit like that. Makes you feel good. Like, your coach is patting you on the back. But at the end of the day, I'm still here. I'm still feeling this way. These things are still happening around me and nothing has changed. Um, I don't know if that brought me the same way to like breathing techniques that it did for you, but nonetheless it still brought me there. And I realized that maybe this is true for you. I guess that's maybe part of my question is when when I started listening to these things, I felt like it was just fuel for the fire and not in a good way. Almost as though I already felt like I was being accelerated through my day, through life. Everything was moving so quickly around me, and I'm just trying to keep up so my feet don't, run out from underneath me. And I feel like some of those motivational videos did nothing but help push me down the hill. But when I stopped and I breathed and I found the more immediate moment that like ice bathing does and cold water immersion, I felt like that stopped the clock. Time stops and I'm actually in control. Not of this runaway train that's flying down the hill that's being accelerated and pushed beyond what I think I can handle, but literally hits pause on the entire world around me and allows me to think almost 1 second in the past. Like I'm so present that I'm fucking before present, and that allowed me to kind of reorganize some of the bricks and the things that needed to be organized in my head before the tape sped back up to normal speed again. But at least I had that. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah, because now I don't really listen anymore to those motivational. It's good to hear, but now what drives me now, it's really like training, ice bathing, and moving, doing sports, and eating healthy too. Because I changed my whole diet and everything now since I've been like so crazy with the getting healthy.
Can I talk to you about your friend that you found?
Yeah,
Okay. In as much detail as you're comfortable, can you tell me about that? Like, was it an overdose or was it just what were the circumstances of that, if you don't mind?
yeah, no problem. Um, I've known he was older. He was an older man. I considered him like a father figure
Mm,
because I lost my mom in 2006,
I'm sorry to hear that.
and I've always had like a crazy like losing people since I was a kid, and I think I had like child trauma because of it. I was exposed to a dead dog when I was like 3. My dad like he went on the side of the road. The dog got hit. It was all a bloody mess, and I think he wouldn't. It wasn't a good idea to bring me along. And I saw that, and I remember I like nightmares about that dog. And then in the elementary school, I had a friend of mine who passed away, and then I had to go to the funerals and everything. And I would make again like dreams about his eyes opening and stuff. And then in 2006, I lost my mom. And then like my mom was the go-to person when I needed to talk. So when she passed away, it fell on this guy's shoulders. So every time I had a problem, I would go see him. And he used to live in my backyard. He was like not a hobo, but a old roofer who quit everything, and
Everything but a hobo.
he quit everything. And he lived in a trailer in the back of my yard. And me and him became really close. And he was like 63 or 64, and he was diagnosed with lung cancer. So, and it was during the winter time. He was stuck in the snow, and I was taking my Charlie's bath, and I was hearing like the car like in the snow. So I open the window, I see him, I tell him, hey, um, don't kill yourself trying to take your car out. I'm gonna put Charlie to bed. I'm gonna come and help you out. But by the time I put Charlie to bed and I went out, I saw him. He was lying in the snow, and I thought first he was joking because we always used to pull pranks on each other every time.
Hmm.
And when I turned around the house, I turned around, and when I turned his body, I saw him like with a skull, like bleeding because of the fall he did when he had a stroke. And yeah, I flipped out. I called like 911 trying to do CPR on him and everything, but he was already all blue when I got there, so I knew he was gone.
Shit, dude. I'm really sorry to hear that. Um, my mom passed away in 2014, and same, and I think it was before it was her time, but yeah, in any event, she really filled that same kind of role for me that your mom did for you. And that was painful. Now, I like to think of myself as kind of a badass, the stuff that I do, and the people that I inspire. I think that you fall into that same category. Uh, and if we say that, then we can say that, like, I'm a guy, I'm a man. I do hard things because they're hard. Certain things excite me. I like a certain level of stress. I like a certain level of anxiety, but at the end of the day, much like you, I've got a past that has countless events that I think have affected me in somewhat of an emotional way, but I've got to keep those emotions kind of tapped down a little bit because there's bigger things to worry about, I suppose, when I'm worrying about the people that are around me, right? My family, my kids, my wife, and so on. Um, and you talked about depression, and I think that we've all experienced that to varying degrees. What, how did you find, I don't want to call it the cure for depression because every depression's different, but how did you find this the key to unlock, I think, the solution for big pieces of your depression? Was it the breath work? Was it the ice? Which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Uh, the first the first thing I touched was the breathing and the cold showers. But when I did my first ice bath was in 2019. No, 220, 2020. My first ice dip. I did the. My wife, she got me a fundamental course with a Wim Hof instructor. It was her name was Barefoot Sue. She's pretty known in the community of the Wim Hof,
Hmm.
and that changed my life. The first time I did the ice dip.
Dude, what was that like though? What was the whole experience like with her? How did she introduce you to it, and where did you start?
But we're like about 10 people in a room, and she explained like all the science behind the breathing and the cold exposure. And then we had a little lunch, and then some breathing, no breathing lunch, and then there was the ice dip. Everyone would take a turn, do 2 minutes each. And the first one that went was a girl, so I went second. I said I have to nail the 2 minutes. I have no choice now. But it was super easy. It was super easy. I thought it was gonna be harder than that, but it was super easy. I did my 2 minutes. I could have stayed longer, but
What did she have you doing when you? Well, how cold was the water?
the water was like 2 or 3
Okay,
Celsius.
that's cold, dude. That's
Yeah.
cold. That's really cold for your first time. Like,
And then I went during winter, so the water was frozen already, and we would add ice every time somebody would go in.
wow, wow. In 2 minutes, so you say it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. What do you mean?
I thought it was gonna be way harder. I thought it was like scream and shit, but I went in just long exhales, and it was super easy.
You realize too that I haven't taken an ice bath yet where I've gotten out and I felt cold after I've gotten out. Within seconds, I'm back to normal.
Yeah, just gotta move. It depends on the wind too. The place I do it in Laval, close to my house, when in the lake. Fuck, man. When the name of the beach, it's called Berge aux Quatre Vents. That means like the verge of four winds, like, or the beach of four winds, something like that. And it's freaking windy sometimes. It's insane.
How has it helped you with addiction though? Like when did you in your addiction timeline, when did you introduce the breathing and when did you begin to eliminate the bad stuff? Like how has it helped you? How have you used it to help you?
For the hard drugs addiction, I pretty much had it under control when my girlfriend was pregnant. Like the just the thought of having a kid, and like having still my addiction problem was a problem for me. I couldn't handle it. So slowly but surely, before she was born, I already had it under control. The only thing I didn't have under control was the alcohol. But the alcohol, since I started my daily dips, I lost interest of drinking. I don't know why. It just went away.
What else have you noticed?
Oh, crazy, crazy. I think everybody needs to do like 1 year of doing it every day, and shit changed, man. It's crazy. Everything changed.
What do you think is harder, ice bathing or cold showers?
Cold showers are fucking hard
Right? Why is that? Why do you think that is?
because the water is touching like parts of your body. It's not all the way in. Like every time you move, it's, fuck, But when you go full immerged to your neck, it's like one feeling.
Your daughters watch you do this. Your youngest joined you. No, not your youngest. I'm sorry. Your oldest joined you in doing it. What kind of example do you think you're setting for her? Are you letting her know when you do this that it helps you clear your mind? Are you letting her know, like in ways that she can understand that this is one of many potential outlets that you can use that might actually help you, and not just physically, but emotionally?
Yeah, yeah. I try to teach my daughters, especially now that I know like the breathing and the cold exposure, all the benefits it has and everything. I'm so happy that I found this before my daughters were too old. So it's going to be harder to teach them. But now I'm teaching them young. And now my daughter, she's the one that asked me, "Hey, Dad, can we go take a cold bath?" I'm like, "Okay, let's go."
Well, let me ask you a question. Um, so when you are in the water, and I'd imagine you're at a place now with your experience where you could stay in there really as long as you like, or as long as you need to, right? Like you've got endurance. It's not just like a pop in and pop out. It's when the job is done is when you'll get out of the bath. Um, is your mind clear, or is that what your intention is when you get in there, is to clear your mind, or is it to solve problems? What do you do when you're in that blank space in between the time that you get in the water and the time that you get out?
But since I've been doing it daily, because usually back in the days when I started, I would do it like when I feel like shit or I feel anxious or depressed. Now I would go. But now since I've been doing it daily, it's another mental state. I just go to get the benefits right away, and so but sometimes I would do two in one day. It's like I feel like shit or anxious, or I would, if I didn't have the chance to go in the cold water, then I would do some breathing.
I'm gonna ask you a personal question. What do you think happens when we die?
Hmm, I don't know, but I had a big problem with death for a long time. I had the fear of death. I think it's not the fear of death. I think it was like even worse than that. I would go like in crazy panic attacks and anxiety attacks. Yeah, I got to the hospital a couple of times when I had those fears because I thought I was gonna die, or and every time they would send me back home because they were telling me I'm having a panic attack because I thought my heart was about to fucking explode in my chest. And even after the incident with the old guy I talked about that died,
Huh? What's his name?
his name was Real.
Yeah, okay.
We call him Jesus because he looked like Wim Hof but with a bigger beard. And when I went to the hospital, when I had my like, I didn't know what was wrong with me, and the doctor told me I had a PTSD because my all my nervous system in my chest was fucked up. I would like have like palpitations in my chest,
Hmm.
and I thought it was my heart, but it was all my nervous system was fucked up for a long time. And the more I was doing the ice baths and the breathing, it would go away. And sometimes it would come back when I would like have a big contract and the business was complicated and then I would like be anxious. It would come back a little bit, but now doing it daily, everything's gone, everything's chill, everything. Like my mindset changed now. Every time I feel like a difficult task, I'm like, okay, let's go, let's do it.
And you attribute that to what do you attribute that
I
to?
attribute that to daily dips, I think, or just my mindset of growing to all this, changing my mindset of calming down. And
Do you feel like the practice of ice bathing on a regular basis helps you manage those feelings when they come up, or is there something that you do when those feelings come up that helps tamp them down? Like, is there a breathing technique that you use, or is there something physical that you do to put those emotions in better perspective, or does the ice bathing just kind of help you manage it throughout the course?
I think it's a combination of my breathing changed. My breathing pattern has changed uh, by practicing this method for a long time, and I think the ice dips too changed, and my mentality changed too. Now I'm more like thinking like a Viking warrior. Like, who cares if I die? I'm gonna go to Valhalla, and I it's like I take charge. I just go for it.
So what's next? Are you going to carve holes in the Arctic ice and try to swim underneath the water like Wim Hof does? Or I mean, how do you one up yourself with ice bathing? Like how do you push the limits there? How do you keep yourself interested?
I just gotta do it at different places, like cool locations. And for sure, I want to try doing holes and going under for to another hole, and just keep being creative in that field. And for sure, now with my new project, Live Without Fear, slowly but surely, I want to make it a business model. But my whole objective is really to help people deal with what I went through and try to get people out of addiction and getting them out of their heads and try to lower the suicide rate around the world.
Do you have a website for Live Without Fear? Facebook group or something?
We're working on it, but we got a Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
Do you do any like breath holding on the side or breath packing or just other things that perhaps aren't Wim Hof, but just other breathing techniques?
That's what I want to learn. I want to learn more because sometimes I would do with because we get people to come and help us out and when we do our events, and we try to get like someone in fitness, someone in breathing, and so they teach us other techniques and everything. But for me, it's pretty much only the Wim Hof method I do.
There's he has workshops though, doesn't he? Can't you go over to Denmark or Amsterdam where he's at and
Yeah,
go through a course?
but he's got trainers all over the world.
What about like you want to go to Kilimanjaro and climb Kilimanjaro in your underwear like the rest of those guys do?
What I'm supposed to do this winter, I want to do like a big mountain we got here, and we're a couple of guys and girls. I want to go and do it for in our shorts, do it like Wim Hof style, what he does, just a pack sack and climb all the way up.
Dude, I have a friend of mine is a world-class photographer and videographer. He went with us when we went to Mount Everest and he spent 3 weeks with us. Uh, I'll link you to him. I'll mention him here. Pete O'Hara. He's absolutely incredible. The work that he does. He just got back from Iceland and doing a project out there. If you needed somebody world class to go with you guys, I can connect you. He's a Canadian, but I think he's a lot farther west than you are. He's in the Rockies, and yeah, he and his girlfriend are both excellent photographers and do this. I'll send you the link to him. You could see his work. Maybe there's a connection there because I think your mission is awesome. And he would just be a great way to memorialize it. Why why do you think that depression now is such a I don't want to say a popular thing to talk about, but everybody seems to be talking about it. Do you think that it's more prevalent now than it ever was, or do you think that people are just more comfortable talking about it now than they ever were?
Yeah, I think it's slowly becoming. We're making like we need to talk more. I think it's an accumulation of generations of trauma, and now we're just over the edge.
I think it's got to be
Maybe the food too. I don't know, but there's something. There's something.
well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how I'd be able to talk about that, but I feel like it is large. I think there's a huge environmental component to it. And I think that it starts at a really young age. I think it starts with this industrialized factory education that they've got our kids in, right? And because here's the deal, if you go back, I'm sure that the Spartans experienced stress and anxiety too, and their lives were a lot different. I mean, they were hacking people to pieces and watching families get, they were part of, but that wasn't traumatic to them. But expectations were a lot different back then. Um, you couldn't put me in Spartan uniform and tell me to go at it, and I wouldn't be emotionally capable of doing that. But they would also not be emotionally capable if you drop them off in Alberta or you drop them off in New York City. They'd fucking lose their mind too. We're not equipped for each other's times. And I feel like there's a biological component, a physiological component to it where, we're trying to be whatever the best demonstration of a biological male would be, a healthy biological male. But at the same time, there's some conflict there, right? Like, listen, if seeing tragedy and seeing death and seeing pain and hurt were in, what we were expected to see every day, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the fact is, we don't expect to see that, and we do lead with our hearts now. And I think that it is largely okay for me to try to be the best friend to my children that I can be, but also being the best parent first, right? But my dad had said something. My dad was a pretty tough guy, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and he said that his biggest, which I still have yet to gain clarity on this. My dad said his biggest mistake when he was raising us was being too much of our friend, and I'm like, there's no fucking way that I don't. There's a huge disconnect there. Um, but anyway, like I want to be best friends with my kids. I do, and but my kids are good people. Also, they know right from wrong. They know respect. They know that what humor is and what's right and what's wrong. And they know my kids are incredible, incredible people. But their expectations are also such that they expect things to be fair and they expect things to be just and they expect that justice be served and good things happen to good people. And when their expectations are challenged in certain ways, right? You've had events that challenge yours, I've had events that challenge mine. That's when it really screws us up, So how it's important to prepare our kids for the future, but also, you know, care for them a little bit too much right now because that's I think what good parents do. Now you've been through a lot. You've seen a lot. I know addiction has touched your life in some pretty dramatic ways. It's also touched my life, but I think that that also boils down to mental health, right? There's something there, and they had you medicated. They had me medicated in high school, and I have a huge bone to pick with the pharmaceutical industry for the shit that I feel like they experimented on me, right?
Yeah, I'm part of that generation too.
Right. So, and I wanted to ask you what you said that they had you on drugs. What did they have? What prescription drugs did they have you on, if you don't mind my question?
When I was a kid,
Yeah.
it was Ritalin, and then they changed it to something stronger because the Ritalin wasn't working. I don't remember what it was back. It was something stronger than Ritalin.
Was it just, did they have you on any antidepressants or was it just ADD medicine?
ADD medicine.
Okay. Well, I got kicked out of high school after a very long tenure in middle school. Um, and they had me on a bunch of other things too. They had me on Ritalin. I forget what it was. They moved me to something else too. And I don't feel like there was anything wrong with me, actually. I just feel like that they were either ill-equipped or unwilling to make an accommodation for somebody that was probably a little bit more intelligent than the average,
Yeah,
right? And I almost feel as though that they gave us those drugs, because it was easier to do that than to manage the person. right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I remember when I started using those things, I hearing my teacher crying in back of me because she couldn't realize that she was an older woman. So for her to see a kid on drugs, and I was freaking high, not like a zombie, so to calm my hyperactivity, and she was crying in back of me.
She gets it though, right? She was one of the ones that got it.
She was sad, but at the same time, it was the only way she could function the class because that was such a
My wife is a teacher. She's an educator. She teaches third grade elementary. And I mean, New Jersey's a very unique educational ecosystem, if you will, pretty liberal. But I mean, I think there's a lot of problems with it. I think there always has been. But when she comes home and she talks about how there may be a kid in her class that has a problem, and the people just don't want to deal with it because it's a lot of paperwork in order to get the child classified in a particular manner, or this kid needs slightly more attention and they can't give it to him. So what do? Farther enough down the line, they give them medication and they basically turn off the lights. Um, and I don't know what I would be like if I never had to take those medicines. But I have a feeling that if I were put in a more nurturative environment, if they had the capabilities to to teach me the way that I should have been teached taught, then I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of Elon Musks out there that that are either drugged or
yeah, for sure.
right or will never be identified because they go to schools in like inner cities where they don't have programs to educate kids like us.
Or when they get older, they fall in drugs because that's the start of it all. Those medication. Because I remember when I stopped using Ritalin because one of my friend in high school told me my mom was trying to kill me. So I told my mom I'm quitting those freaking medication. And then a couple of years later, I fell into drugs, and that's how it all started because I would get that same freaking feeling back.
Dude, I I wonder, I never thought of that. I wonder how many somebody should do a study on that
Oh,
because
I'm sure that would be real high. Like the numbers of kids that were stuck on Ritalin or medication for ADHD or hyperactivity, I'm pretty sure the numbers are real high. That people that when they come off that, they fall into like opiates and cocaine or whatever, all hard drugs, because it's similar. It's almost the same thing.
well, even if it's not, I think that I think that there's something in there. You change the programming in a way. Whether the kid thinks that, okay, well, there is a solution and it comes in this tiny little package that I can just swallow, or there is something where it messes with the receptors in your head, where you feel as though when a gauge hits a certain level in your brain, there's an expectation of something, right? Maybe that's where the dopamine is. Maybe that's where those other neurochemicals are. Because I also have had a past that includes a huge chapter on addiction, both as a first and as a third person. It's been very close to me. I've seen it up close, and I bear a lot of yeah. I've yet to forgive myself for a lot of things, right? Um, but when I go into an ice bath, for me, it's meditation in the sense that I'm bringing myself back to silence, to peace, right? To stillness. So I get in there and all these thoughts run through my mind and I can't get to peace or stillness until I turn off all of the sensations on the outside, right? So muscles are contracting, I've got to let those go. Breathing has been altered by the cold water, I've got to let that go. When I can just sit there and be, now my mind is starting to kind of defrag itself and it might go off on a tangent, but then I bring it back and
Hmm.
what I think is important there is that that's an incredible practice, um, in the sense where if we feel as though we have a craving or a compulsion to use whatever it is that we have our compulsions to use, understanding how difficult it is to do that in an ice bath when you're subjected to physical discomfort, but you're still able to bring your brain back to zero is a huge tool that you can use when you feel like you've got an addictive compulsion happening. And you could bring yourself back to, well, hold on a second, just silence. Not no, not I'm not going to do it, not this isn't a good time, but rather, hold on a second, let me just find ground level first. And then once you find ground level, you find that you're also 7 or 8 minutes past the initial sensation. So
Yeah,
so it comes back and you're like, well, hold on. No, no, no. I'm closer than I was last time. You can take a few deep breaths and bring yourself back to zero. And I feel as though the ice bath is an exercise in that, where, the game is supposed to be easy if your practice is hard enough, right? So if I practice in the ice bath, when those real world situations occur where I need to utilize that tactic, it's a whole lot easier than it would have been if I didn't have any practice at all. Does that right?
oh yeah, 100%. Oh yeah.
I want to ask you one more question, and I think that you're going to have an incredibly interesting perspective on this. What does it mean to you to be human?
It's hard. I don't know.
And you could take your time, because I'm in no rush, but I want to hear what your answer is.
What is a human?
What does it mean to be human?
To be human? For me now, I would say with to be connected with all your emotions, emotionally connected, and feeling feeling people like when you have a conversation with someone, like you can know what they're going through just by listening to them, like having a full how do you say in English,
You're describing empathy,
empathy.
right? Feeling what the other person feels, right?
Yeah,
I think that's an awesome answer. Um, where can people find you? Because I know they're going to be interested in you and in living without fear and everything else.
but the Instagram, it's Ice Viking Dad. TikTok, it's Viking Ice Dad, and Facebook is Joe LaChapelle. But I got a second page that I made now because it's easier for everyone to find me. It's another Ice Viking Dad, and we got Live Without Fear on all socials.
Awesome. Well, Joe LaChapelle, it's been a pleasure, man. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you for taking me.